Welcome to our live Q&A with Full Living After 50 experts. I'm going to introduce them in a minute, but I just want to sort of remind everyone that, and thank you for your interest in this incredible topic, Full Living After 50. We're going to answer your questions about all things menopause and life after 50 in an hour. We can do a lot of work in that. We're always available to continue the conversation, absolutely. And I just want to share, my name is Meredith Besh. I'm an energy coach. My company is called Box, and I'm the host of Full Living After 50. And by now, you probably know that I had a pretty train wreck of an experience passing into perimenopause and menopause. And it really was a wake-up call for me as what used to be the body that worked most of the time, all of a sudden stopped working. And it was a real threat to my mindset, my feeling of aliveness in the world. Like I really, as someone who's incredibly positive, and I'm a coach and I work with energy all the time, I was finding that I was really in battle with my body. And that was taking a toll in so many ways, certainly my energy. My relationships, because I was just on edge. I was, sleep deprived and moody and cranky, like literally my body was cranky. So I was realizing I'm not the only one who feels this way during menopause. Like for some of us, it's a really rough transition. And I also think it's this beautiful wake-up call to stop doing things the way you've always done them and lean into kind of your new truth, what's currently important to you. So yeah, the old strategies weren't working for me. So this is an invitation, if you're going through this time as well, perhaps to look at what those old strategies are, those habits or mindsets that used to work that are kind of no longer working. Because what if menopause is an invitation to really show up more powerfully in the world? And I think that's what we're going to be talking about today is, sure, there's things to know, remedies and approaches and practices. And ultimately, I think all of us here believe that you really can have a full life. So with that, let's do, before I introduce my experts, I want to make sure most of us have arrived. We've got a few people joining. Hello, welcome. And this all will be recorded and shared. So if we say anything super important, you'll be able to go back and watch the replay. But let's just check in for a minute, because I wanted to do just some intention setting, because we have you for an hour and you'll never get this hour back. So I want to make sure that we just settle in, maybe put our feet on the floor, adjust our butts in the seat, and just really arrive. For a lot of us, it's either midday or end of day. It's Friday. We might be thinking about what's ahead. We might be processing what has come before us in a busy Friday day as we wrap stuff up. So let's just check in. And I want you to set an intention for this time together. What is it that you want to get out of today's conversation? Is it, just notice what's up for you. It could be something, a thought that keeps needling you. It could be an ache or a pain. It could be a question. Just sense into what do you most need for this hour. And as you do that, I want to invite you into that physical space of your body. This beautiful companion who's walked with you all this time, and now is probably getting a lot more of your attention. And then the emotional body, right? At 50, we're all we're so much more aware of our triggers and what we love, what we desire in a way. And then our spiritual body. Because this conversation really is a doorway into more meaning, more joy, more desire, more aliveness. at life after 50. Just settle into what's present for you. Maybe take a few deep breaths. You know, the nervous system needs to just catch up. It feels so delicious to be regulated and breathing and in touch with it. Thank you. See so many familiar faces. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate your support and interest. Some quick housekeeping. This is really your time. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and pop up on our screen so we can see you. Or I'm absolutely going to keep watch on the chat. So feel free to put chat questions in there. Again, you'll get a replay and you can share the replay. This is available to anybody. So if you've got people in your life who are dealing with these kind of issues, feel free to share the wisdom. That's what we're here for. And at the end, we will give you more specific ways where you can either stay in touch with any of us or access some of the resources that we have for you. So there'll be more information about that. So with much ado, let's introduce our experts. Our first expert is Tara Galeano. Hello, Tara. She is a certified sex therapist and the founder of Rediscovering My Body. She has worked with women and couples for over 2 decades to get their sexy back. And she knows that there is pleasure in the body beyond our wildest dreams, and everyone can access it. So we're hoping to hear more about that. She has a book, Rediscovering My Body, and she teaches in that book how to show up for pleasure. Tara offers unique couples retreats, ceremonial sensual journeys that open doors to new experiences and communication with oneself and partners. Thank you, Tara, for being with us. And she's local to San Francisco Bay Area. So then we have a new friend, Claire Stanley. I met Claire, gosh, in fall, I believe. And I was just so amazed at the knowledge and expertise that she has that I thought everyone needed to meet Claire. So Claire is a certified functional diagnostic nutrition health practitioner. And what that means, because I didn't know what that means, it's kind of like a naturopath light. So just think of it that way. She is so practiced in understanding what's at the root of all these symptoms that we're going through. And you're in Mercer Island, Washington. And she founded Creative Balance Health in 2010 with a mission to support women to develop self-compassion, become empowered, and feel validated with their health. And then her story is after years of dealing with medical gaslighting and trial and error to overcome her own chronic fatigue, weight gain, autoimmune health issues, she knew that there was a better way to balance self-care, work, personal life while restoring health. Boy, I relate to that. And today she helps midlife women take back control of their energy, digestive health, and weight naturally. She has custom programs, offers personalized diets, self-care plans, support, resources, accountability, everything so that you can feel like yourself again. So welcome, Claire.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Okay, let me just make sure there's nothing in the chat. Everyone's receiving the message. Fabulous. Okay. Got my windows open. All right, guys. So maybe kick us off. Maybe Tara, can you just tell me a little bit about the top concerns that you see people have around sexuality, pleasure, play?
Yeah, so I'll focus on the women over 50.
Fabulous. We appreciate that.
Because I see so many people. And for those women, what I notice is that they're coming to an edge and discomfort and recognizing that oftentimes that they don't feel sexy and that they want to feel sexy and that there's some discord or disruption in their partnership around sex and sexuality, how to connect intimately. And if they're not in a long-term relationship or in a relationship, they're seeking one. And so then dating is also a big issue, which brings up goodness, body image issues, self-confidence, self-worth, skills, because the skills now for dating have totally changed. I mean, it's amazing. So
I'm
those are
proud of
some of the
that.
top concerns that I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. Thank you. Claire, from your vantage point, what are you seeing in your clients and friends?
Um, I'm seeing a lot of people coming to me and they're blaming themselves. Like they're saying, I must be doing something wrong with, I'm not eating right, or I'm eating terribly, or I'm not exercising enough. And it kind of breaks my heart because it's rarely the case. Often they're over exercising and creating more inflammation. And their diet is really not bad at all. Unfortunately, where they're getting this from is because when, they find that, wait, all of a sudden I'm not the way I was yesterday, or feels like that to us, where, we knew what to do, and all of a sudden we're really tired, and we were noticing, fat and belly, our bellies are growing, and all of these sort of weird things are happening when we feel like nothing's changed. So we'll go to our doctors, and they're telling us that our blood work is normal, and that this is to be expected at this age, kind of like suck it up, buttercup kind of a thing.
Yeah.
You're just depressed. Here's some Wellbutrin. Have you tried? Maybe you should work out harder. And so they're getting this information because of what they're hearing from their doctors, from the media. And basically everyone is telling women that this is your fault, when in fact it isn't. And it's often just really rooted from stress, which I'm pretty sure most women in their 50s, if not 40s and 60s, have stress in their lives, between work, family, a lot of aging parent issues, financial issues the last several years for everyone. So there's stress, and that causes a lot of issues in our bodies, but they all seem to blame themselves. And I think that's, to me, one of the more heartbreaking situations that I try to help them with.
Yeah, I so relate. And on this topic of stress, because my foray into this whole journey was around the adrenal support. And the practitioner I was working with, she's like, all you have to do is manage your stress. And I was like, I could do anything other than that. Like, that seems to be the hardest thing. Just give me a workout, tell me not to eat something, but managing stress seems almost impossible. So what do you do for someone who is getting all those symptoms that needs to, quote, manage their stress? It can't just be like meditate. Like, there's got to be a more robust solution.
And I had the same situation. So this was much longer ago, and it was before anyone knew about like food intolerances or gluten. This was before all of that, so there was no information, but I was told I had what was referred to then as adrenal fatigue, which is a misnomer. It's not just the adrenal glands. There's a lot of other things going on, and it's very complicated. But I had the same thing. I couldn't get out of bed. I had business. I was a single mom, and I couldn't keep up. And it was very frustrating. The thing that was really difficult for me, even once I was in training and went, back to school to do what I do now, is I thought when people said, oh, well, you're under a lot of stress. I was working in media, so clearly it was stressful. But I thought because I had my composure, I didn't, I wasn't flailing, I wasn't reacting, I wasn't going into hysterics or drama, that I had stress down. I was managing it. It was fine. And so even when I did hear stress, it didn't gel. And I think with a lot of the women I talk to, it's the same thing. It's like, look, we push through. We manage stress. Stress doesn't get to us. We're kicking ass. We're doing things. The problem is that while that may be what we do on the outside, sort of our primal reactivity is in, fight, flight, freeze mode. And so we're still rushing the hormones. So even if you think you've got it under control, I promise you, if you're dealing with any of these symptoms, you don't.
Yes.
So I think for me, and for a lot of people to understand what is happening. I think that, yeah, meditation is great. I feel like being aware of your body and noticing the signs. It's like, oh, because it's, again, I'm like, hey, I'm under control, but it's like, wait a minute, I'm starting to feel really tired. Even now, I mean, I'm trained, I've been through this. Hey, I have stress, you know, I've got deadlines, I'm normal. So it's like, oh, I'm noticing my stomach's a little upset, or I'm noticing fatigue, you know, more than usual, maybe some aches and pains or inflammation. It's a sign.
Yeah.
So I think more than anything is being more aware of your body, you know, keeping and stop the pushing through thing that we as women are told to do.
Right.
And then create that space, you know, maybe go for a massage, do whatever it, you know, there's so many things you can do.
Yeah.
You know, there's oils, there's meditation, there's gratitude, journaling. It's infinite. You know, the other things to do also is, if you notice you're in a stressful situation, you're dealing with deadlines, it's obvious there's stuff going on, be more careful about the foods that you're putting in your body. Not the time to push. While we want to self-medicate with a glass of wine, you know, or that extra cup of coffee with a lot of sugar in it to get us through the day, that's really the time to not do those things. You know, instead find a nice, you know, herbal tea with a lot of adaptogens in it that help with the stress, or you know, take your dog for an extra long walk, you know, build in more breaks to sort of, you know, do some sort of jumping up and down to kind of release any kind of trapped stress hormones in your body. But just, I think awareness is probably the first thing. Like with anything, you know, I guess even if you're in a 12-step program kind of a thing, it's like, it's just acknowledging, yes, I am in a stressful situation, and so I'm going to take these extra steps right now.
Yeah, beautiful. I have gotten more aware of my nervous system. That was something I didn't pay attention to before, and now I can notice, like, wow, I'm revving, and this revving I used to think was a good feeling, like, oh, that means I'm really focused and productive. And now I'm like, oh, that revving means I'm dysregulated. Oh, okay. We have a question slash thought in the chat. And she says, Claire, I identify with everything you're saying about noticing stress and fatigue in your body, but I am literally tired all the time, and so have trouble identifying which times I'm headed for an episode of fatigue that lays me flat. Any initial advice? Like, what would you recommend she do if she were a client of yours?
Yeah, typically what happens is when this is pretty much how most of my clients come to me. And it really, what I know is probably going to be the situation is that they've kind of hit a threshold where the stress and the stress hormones have created so much inflammation in the body that it's created sort of a ideal situation for pathogens, for bacteria, that's when we start to see bacterial imbalances. H. pylori is a very, very common bacterial infection that I see with stress. It can show up as, you know, feeling like heartburn or burping, you know, and there's a lot of symptoms with it, but it's how the medical establishment used to diagnose things like ulcers, is literally looking for this one particular bacteria. When we start to see that kind of inflammation, which is from the flood of hormones and that go into the body and the gut, you know, over 80% of our immune system is in our gut. A lot of our hormone function is actually influenced by what things are happening in the gut. And so it sort of starts this whole cascade. And so you'll start to see pathogens and other issues in the gut, things to develop like leaky gut symptoms. And because of that, that's usually when you need a little bit more intervention. And so that's sort of where I see this sort of self-blaming. It's like, oh, it must be the food I'm eating, or I'm not exercising enough that's causing this problem. And what it is that the stress has gotten so bad, or it's been so chronic that we've now created an inflammatory state in the gut. And so that's where I test to find out exactly what is there, because each thing needs to be handled a certain way. But then, at that point, I would say, put someone on an anti-inflammatory diet. I want to remove as much inflammation in the body as possible. So whether that's from foods, things that we put on our body, stress in general, things like that. But we also need to then sort of repair. We need to remove the pathogens, and we need to restore gut balance. We need to remove any pathogens. This is where we tend to see women who have reoccurring candida, fungal infections. It's very much, unfortunately, they'll go to their doctor and they have obvious symptoms, but they're not asked, or no one looks into why it happened to begin with. And the why is because of these other imbalances in the gut where there's a pathogen situation. And so what I would do is, on your own, the best thing you can do is just reduce as much inflammation in your body as possible. But you do want to find someone who can test to see exactly where you're having some issues so that we can repair the gut, support the liver, remove the pathogens, because you want to do that safely, which means you want to make sure your liver can support the removal of the pathogens, and then restore integrity to your gastrointestinal lining, or what's often referred to as leaky gut, to make sure that this inflammation doesn't continue. That's really key. And that's where you need the help of someone like myself or another practitioner. Yeah,
it feels like, having gone through many years of these kind of approaches, there's no quick fix, It's
all just I wish there was.
It's like that's why I consider it an invitation. It's like an invitation to know your body in a whole new way, because you just can't ditch it anymore. Like, it's there. You're in conversation all the time. What are you nourishing it with? How are you holding it? How are you giving it play and pleasure? Like, it just feels like your body comes online after 50s. Like, you can't ignore it. Is kind of what it feels like.
Yeah. And I do see, usually once we get the results back and we know what we're dealing with, and I put someone on a protocol, within the first 2 weeks, they do start to feel a lot better. And sometimes things like what seemed like hormone symptoms, like night sweats and hot flashes, was really being caused by the inflammation of the gut. And that goes away. Even though I haven't directly addressed any hormones yet, I really find that looking at the gut first can really help in a lot of other areas, like joint pain, sleep disturbances, things like that. And there's more and more information out there now. There's more awareness of the gut brain connection. There's a lot out there about cognitive and emotional disorders, things like Alzheimer's and mood issues, things that we call like foggy brain, all of that stuff. Yeah, it seems to be a lot of it can get resolved or definitely mitigated once we take care of what's happening in the gut.
Claire,
yeah.
I love that. And Jennifer has a quick question, and then I want to head over to Tara. But could you just address, would testing be done by a general practitioner, or do you need someone who's not your doctor? And she wants to know a little bit more about tea with adaptogens. So what's the quick reply for her?
Oh, yeah. The testing is, there's really a great test. It's called the GI map. It's the one that I really like the best. I definitely know that there's naturopaths out there who run it. I have access to like thousands of tests, but there's certain ones that I know are really good. I'm very much a fan of this test because you get so much important information out of it.
It's called the
GI map test. Yeah. And I wish you could get this with the general practitioner, but you can't. It used to be covered by insurance, and it is no longer, and which means that you're not going to see it in your general practitioner. It's why a lot of doctors and naturopaths have gone to concierge, is because of insurance. A lot of the better tests, the ones that actually find the right markers and do things properly, insurance isn't covering.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate. And so in any case, but this test is really the gold standard. I've had clients who they had a whole, test done. They come back from Bali knowing like they went on a trip and they
Some
knew something was
parasites.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Bali belly. And they were so obvious. And they went to their doctor, very trusted. Nope, everything's fine. No parasites, no nothing.
Mm.
Call me, I run this with the lab, and there's parasites, there's H. pylori, there's all sorts of stuff. And then, legally they can bring the test results to their doctor. I provide a letter with if they want to go that route.
Yeah.
And, they were like, wow, I wish what we were using would pick this up.
Yes.
And I do too, it's so, it's important, but it's a great lab.
So now tell us quickly about tea with adaptogens.
I've been doing a dry January, and so there's a lot of teas. There's even wine. There's non-alcoholic wines out there. There's teas. I just picked up a local one in the Seattle area where they're adding adaptogens, because honestly, one of the reasons, especially we as women, we drink wine is because we want to chill out. We want something to help us relax. And so if we could, so there's a lot of alternatives out there that have things like rhodiola, ashwagandha, and other things that are adaptogens that are really helpful to sort of modulate our, adrenal responses, to help us chill out, actually to do a lot of the things that we like about our glass of wine. But without all of the negative side effects, or, where you're not, feeling like garbage in the morning or concerned about what you're doing to your liver. So they're widely available. I know, Instagram and social media is flooded right now with all sorts of powders and celebrity endorsed,
It's
beverages and mixtures. And I'm seeing it out here. So it's any kind of adaptogen is just really great for helping with the stress response in your body.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Well, when I hear, chill out and help us relax, I think of an orgasm. How's that for a transition?
I love it.
But let's be clear. In the last 2 years, only recently, now that my hormones are getting balanced, do I have a libido. So just, can you speak to just how do I regain my desire? What does that even look like? Just help us out.
Yeah. So I love what you were saying, Claire. My favorite adaptogen is ashwagandha. I take that regularly. That's my favorite. And Meredith, when you were saying a robust solution, I was thinking, oh yeah, sex.
Totally.
It is a great activation of one's life force. And oftentimes what I find is similar to what Claire was saying, is that the overwhelm that so many of us live in. And then what needs to happen primarily is that we need to reset. And part of the way to do that is to relax. And sex often feels like it's not going to be relaxing, because there's a lot of tension, especially if you haven't been having it recently with your partner, that it sets people off. And so it activates their nervous system as something that they want to avoid. And so the opportunity is, Luann Brizendine says in her book, The Female Brain, is to rest and reset. And so really taking the opportunity to do something intimate with your partner that is going to emotionally connect the two of you, and then see where it goes. Oftentimes what I find is that as we get older and we become more mature, we actually want more emotional intimacy, but we don't have the vocabulary, we don't have the language to begin to activate that and ask for it effectively. So we go without, or we imagine it's just about sex. And oftentimes I'd say by and large, for most people, it's not. They really want the emotional connection.
So how do you broach that? Especially if you're so stressed out and you just know, you just kind of go without. So how do you even step into that when you think, well, yeah, maybe I do need some connection with a partner?
Yeah. It's fascinating how all of these different fields overlap. So I love what you were saying too, Claire, about the sensations in the body. So what I like to say is the interoceptions, like being aware of the sensations that are happening in the body. So meditation is great, but it actually can cause more anxiety for people because it's a very heady practice. But the opportunity to come into the body and be aware of the sensations is a very powerful practice. And when we can take it down even further, not just the sensations that are up here, but further down in our body to our pelvis, to our vaginal area. I like to say yoni, the Sanskrit word for vagina, and to feel into those spaces, those places in our body. It's a much different sensation. It's a much different way to live in our lives, to live in our being. And so shifting the awareness from this part, which gets so much play, down to the lower parts of our body. I mean, even down to our feet, like we can feel more connected to the ground. And I like to remind people of the words that we use, like understanding, like understanding, being actually on our feet and feeling that connection to the earth, that there's a lot of power there, that there's life force energy that's actually quite orgasmic. And it's available to us at any moment when we allow ourselves to really feel and be in our bodies.
When I was in a group of other menopausal women, there were many who started menopause early because they had had their female organs removed. And does that, I mean, how does, if you don't have the, you know, the ovaries and uterus, can you still feel vital sexually? Do you have clients who've kind of worked through that?
Yes. Yeah, I've actually worked with a lot of women who've had cancer. And so they've had reproductive cancer, colorectal cancer, which all impacts their libido, for lack of a better term, their sexual desire. And so then what happens is recognizing that actually our mind is the biggest or the most important sex organ in our being. Then I've worked with people who've had paraplegia, where they needed to find a different spot on their body that was orgasmic. And this was the sensation of orgasm for them because of neuroplasticity within our brain, is that we can, if we have that experience, if we have that recognition in our being, we can transfer it with time and patience and love to other parts of our body. So yes, we don't need those reproductive organs to have great mind-blowing sex.
Love that. I wish it was that easy.
I know, right?
Love it. Okay, I have another question coming through from Lisa. Back to gut health, but this is such a big topic. What is the best diet, quote unquote, for gut health? Is there a silver bullet?
No, well, I mean, there's always like, what's the right diet for me? And it depends. What I would say is for inflammation, the things, if you are dealing with inflammation or we're trying to recover, an anti-inflammatory diet is usually where I'm going to have my clients go for a minimum of 3 months while we're in repair mode. It's not a forever sentence. It's not a punishment. We're just trying to bring down inflammation. It's not the most popular thing, I will say this, and I struggle too with it. I understand. But basically what we want to do is we want to remove the foods that we all know, everyone knows, medical science knows that these are the most inflammatory foods, to give our gut a chance. That is going to be things like gluten, wheat, anything that contains gluten, dairy, sugar, alcohol. So yay, adaptogen tea, sorry, wine, caffeine, things like that. And then grains can be a problem. Nuts, eggs are highly inflammatory. And so things that people don't realize that they're reacting to, but we take those, and it just depends case by case. When I work with someone, if someone comes to me and I know they're talking about a lot of pain in their joints or in their body, fibromyalgia, those kinds of issues, I'm probably going to say, let's see what happens if we get rid of things like nightshades. I know what is
what's
left. It's so hard. I know. And that's what I work with people with, is like, you can do this. A paleo diets are pretty a good thing to do. I mean, look, vegetables are there and proteins are there. And this isn't a forever thing, but we're looking to repair, and we need to get your gut repaired, and you need to give it a chance. You don't want to keep poking it with a stick to get inflamed. It's not going to heal. Yeah. So just like you would with a wound on the outside of your body, you want to treat it nicely. You put a Band-Aid on it and in order to protect it and to heal it. That's what this is for. And that's why I am a cross between a naturopath and a coach. I do both because these are lifestyle changes that are not easy to do. And I recognize that. And so you want to be able to work with someone who can kind of help you get through this transition and give you advice on ways to do that. And there's definitely, there's tools that I offer and apps and things like that. But no, it's not fun. It is also why I don't test for food sensitivities until after we've done this gut healing protocol first, because a lot of people will get tested for food sensitivity while they're in this inflammatory mode. And while I understand some of the reasoning behind it, because they're saying, well, these foods are causing inflammation. The problem with the test is that when you're in this mode, especially with leaky gut, you're basically all of the foods, and usually the ones you're eating the most, are going to show up red. Yeah. And if you think just going on a low inflammatory diet is hard, when you see all of these red things, it is just, it's just too depressing. It's discouraging. And it's why, and so no one can stay with that. And I feel like it's an expensive, these aren't inexpensive tests. And it's not fair to my clients. And so rather than putting them through that, let's figure out the obvious ones we know are going to cause inflammation. Let's deal with those first. And then if we're still seeing unresolved inflammation afterwards, then, we'll look into it. But usually when you do remove these foods for 3 months, when they are slowly reintroduced, you can tell right away, oh, my body is reacting to it. And it makes it easier to make those choices. Yeah. So this is really hopefully it shouldn't be a forever thing. But sometimes for certain things like gluten and things that are cross-reactive with gluten, they are.
Cross-reactive, what does that mean?
So the body is, gluten is, gluten is the only food that is known where the body will create B cells for it, meaning that it is and what happens is that the body will see the gluten will get through different parts of the different proteins and peptides involved with gluten and wheat germs, so non-gluten parts of wheat will become inflammatory in the body. It'll get through the gut because of the leaky gut. It'll dock into different areas of the body, which is one of the reasons why it's so pernicious. Wow. And depending on your inflammatory state, your body is sort of on high alert, bringing in the forces. And so you start to have these autoimmune reactions in the body. For some reason, there's different proteins, different peptides in gluten and in the wheat germ and lectins and things like that, that the body confuses with other foods like corn, soy, a lot of grains. And so what we see there's certain foods that are highly cross-reactive, oats with gluten, and everyone is unique. Yeah. So it's not like I could say for sure this is going to be the case. So I run, I run like Zoomer tests or tests through Cyrex, that will really look at the individual proteins so we can see what's happening. And we can detect whether you're having an immediate reaction, which is an IgA reaction, versus an IgG reaction, which means this is from a long-term chronic, your body is reactive to this. And so there's, the better tests will look at the individual proteins and the peptides of the foods, as well as IgG, IgA. There's a lot of different markers, and most food sensitivity tests don't do that. They look at the whole food, or they just look at immediate reactions to something. And so it's important to have the right test.
Right.
So that
well,
makes
and
sense.
it feels so individual too.
It is a bio individualities.
Yeah.
That's what I was trained on, and everyone is unique. You know, in terms of the best foods for their body, it's sort of like a, you know, you have different fuel mixes for a car, you know, like a sports car versus a train versus a plane versus a boat.
Right.
We're the same genetically. So I do metabolic, you know, diet as type assessments to see what the right mix is, and look at macronutrient ratios and purine levels in foods as opposed to calories, which I don't do. I don't look at calories at all.
Right. That seems to be the least helpful measure.
Right.
So
yeah, the most stressful, the least helpful.
Jennifer is inviting us back into sex. Thank you, Jennifer. What is the best way to restore libido? Can it be restored? Like if your hormones are off, are you just going to feel like no sexual desire? Or is there a way to feel sexy again?
Yeah, I'd say always. Yeah, there's always.
Where'd that go? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I would say mostly it takes time, and that particularly in the female body, it takes, I would say, a slowness. And I think, like, when I imagine the way some of my clients describe to me their self-pleasure sessions, it really is about this masturbation, and they're using a vibrator. So there's this high intensity revving, which they know gets them off, and they know how to go there. And I think the opportunity when you're reawakening your pleasure is to slow things way down and to recognize where pleasure already exists in your body. And so it could be going out into the rain and feeling the raindrops on your skin brings you pleasure. And then when was the last time that you actually experienced that? Maybe it was as a child. And the sensations, really coming back into the sensations, are a powerful way to come back into pleasure and to really begin to divorce yourself from your partner's expectations and bringing the focus to yourself. Because when you're able to reference yourself and know that there's tremendous amount of pleasure there, then you can have pleasure pretty much anytime with anyone. But it's about you activating that for yourself, because nobody else is responsible for your orgasm.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, this may be more of a 0 to 60 kind of tool, but there's I'm trying to remember what it's called. There's a erotica for women, and it's an audio service. So you listen to these stories, and they can go from really romantic to just a little, you know, there's new skills evidently in sex since I was on the market. But yeah, anything around erotica that you could suggest for women that feels like it's more authentic to who we are rather than the porno stuff that maybe guys watch.
I mean, so much I can say about that. And really what I've been following recently is women-owned companies that are producing pornography. And I hate to even say the word pornography because it's just such a pejorative word in our society, but erotica, and that they're really creating short films and visual stimulation for women that are based on women's pleasure, which I really enjoy. And there's so much more out there. And I'll just have to give you the links, I guess, in an email, because I'll have to go through my files. Yeah, but there's films out there. There's books out there. I love the audio that you were mentioning, because there is so much out there, and it really is the activation of our senses and going beyond the standard of what it was that we would normally do, which I mentioned earlier, kind of like the vibrator and the vibrator on the clitoris. Like, well, okay, but there's so much more, and a lot of it has to do with slowing down and allowing and giving yourself permission to explore what turns you on, because it may not be what you've been programmed in your mind. And I'll just say briefly that oftentimes pornography, which is a form of entertainment, has been introduced as education. and it's, infiltrated our minds, and it's just not true.
Right. That's just not it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I hear that for sure. Thank you. I'll definitely remember the subscription I have. It's so funny. I have it. It reminds me in my inbox. You're like, you haven't listened. I'm like, oh, I should go listen. Just because, I mean, you need to disrupt your life and tune into your own sensations for a little bit. And I always feel relaxed after, because when you orgasm, what is the chemical you get? Isn't it like
endorphins?
Endorphins, yeah. Yummy endorphins. Who doesn't want that? It's got to be good for our adrenals, right there.
Yeah. And I think also, to a point about like the slow, a lot of the things I recommend, would kind of build into that, where you're, for relaxation, like getting massages. I give my clients a dry brush as part of their welcome kits, just to kind of help with the lymphatic system, but it also kind of gets you, stimulates your skin. It helps with the body, preps it, to be more receptive to touch and more sensitive. But the saunas, any of those, that kind of physical pleasure, it's also very relaxing. Having the warm baths, using essential oils, but just there's ways to, do that. I know when I have had periods of high stress, it's like, that's when I'll schedule like foot massages or, pedicures or, anything like that, that just kind of helps with the body to relax. And massage is not like the therapeutic ones that hurt, try to go for the ones that are a little bit more, we've all had those. It's like, ow, more on the Zen level.
Doesn't need to be a workout.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I have one more question from you, and it's about this one says her libido's fine, but her hoo-hoo is so paper thin, and everything hurts, even with prescription cream. So I assume this is hormones, yeah. And any thoughts to any intervention or physical fixes for that?
What I recommend is almond oil, because it's a rejuvenative, and it will help restore the tissue there. And that as we get older, as we hit menopause, there is a thinning of the vaginal lining of the vaginal tissue, and the dryness, the lack of lubrication, and organic almond oil, although expensive, is really restorative. And so what I would do is I would do a daily massage, ideally, and then I would also soak a tampon and insert it into the vagina and leave it in there overnight. So this way it's going to be infused in the vagina during the night. I think that's really important.
That's so cool.
It's really cool. Yeah, so you have to lay a towel down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
make sure you don't have any nut allergies first. So I wouldn't just hesitate, which I love this. I'm just saying,
definitely no nut allergies. Oh my God, that would
nut allergies, or at least not to almonds. So I love almond oil. So
that's a great recommendation. Thank you. Wow.
Coconut is good as well. Coconut is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And coconut isn't perceived as a nut, is it?
It is not. Yeah, it's not a nut.
So you're safe. Okay. I can see us all now going and getting our coconut dipped, whatever. There's got to be some cute phrase for that. Okay. So thank you, Naomi. She says this is great information, and we appreciate you being here. So thanks for coming. Well, if are there any other questions for our experts before we wrap up? Because I just wanted them to have a chance to talk a little bit about what their resources they have.
I did have a quick question about hemp milk.
Oh yes, please.
Yeah, I've never been a milk drinker or whatever, but I do like tea with something in it. Hate the nut milks, hate the soy milk, love oat milk, but it's oats. Is there what are other alternatives or not?
The one thing about hemp milk, because I used to love to work, I would make non-dairy ice cream, and hemp milk had a very similar consistency to bovine dairy. The thing is that what I've noticed is that if you do have a gluten intolerance, that most of the hemp products right now are not certified gluten-free anymore because of the way it's grown close to wheat and other grains or how it's manufactured. And so if you're using that product and you have a gluten intolerance or you're avoiding gluten and you think you're safe, just be aware of that and just to be make double sure on the product that you're using. Otherwise, yeah, it's great. One of the other problems with some of the aseptic milk cartons that we're seeing is that a lot of them use gums and things like carrageenan and things like that to get the consistency that you want. And again, I'm seeing more and more people with sensitivities to those types of gums. And sometimes it'll show up as you discomfort in your stomach and things. If there's a lot of these kinds of binders and gums are used in alternative to dairy, alternative to wheat products. And so just be aware of that. And then also always look for sugar. If you have the option to get the non-sweetened version, do that. But otherwise, I think hemp has a very good consistency to it. If you like the taste in your coffee or tea, go for it.
I like the coconut one.
Yeah.
I like. Is that your dog wagging its tail?
Me?
Yeah.
My dog has brought over the heaviest toy to bake.
Okay.
So I'm going to mute myself.
Well, we understand you have to go.
Mine's in the
Naomi.
crate, so you didn't hear all that.
I just wanted to say
please.
my partner makes a pumpkin milk, and he uses pumpkin milk with the hemp seeds, and it takes him all like 5 minutes. He throws in a couple of dates in there to sweeten it, and it's really good. Never had pumpkin milk before.
Oh, that's exciting.
I'm starting to see more and more of those things, and there's more and more products out there, especially like if you go to like Whole Foods or PCC or your health food stores where they don't have the additives in it. It's a little bit more expensive, but worth it. And I know there's also ways you can just make your own. It's work, but there's better options out there now.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, well, I think we've touched on so many topics, and we could have spent hours. This is an evolution. But can you tell me, you guys have some resources for our viewers? Anything that they need to make sure they grab? Tara, tell me about your wisdom journal.
Sure. So I have a body wisdom journal to help you really come into yourself. There's some journal prompts. I love to write, and it's an opportunity to just touch base with yourself, literally, figuratively, and to be really just to affirm that you are the expert on you. I mean, really, that's my biggest takeaway that I'd like to leave with each and every one of you is that I'm just a guide. I'd like to help people in the area of sex and sexuality. And I really want each of you to take ownership of you are the expert on your sexual lives, on your health life, on your mental health, your well-being. And that the more that we're able to take ownership of that, the more that we're going to transform this planet. That's really the truth, I believe.
Love it. Hooray. Will you, if you have the link, either put it in the chat and we'll make sure it goes
I'll
with
do
the
that
replay
now.
as well.
Yes.
Perfect. And Claire, what are you offering to folks who have interest in learning about all of this?
Well, I have a couple of programs, but I mostly work with sort of exhausted midlife women dealing with feeling sluggish. They don't want to feel so sluggish and uncomfortable in their bodies anymore. And so I offer a Get Stuff Done vitality booster in my energy and gut health reset program. But for everyone here, I have a free workbook that I offer, and it's the energy recovery workbook, and it's just some things you can do on your own at home just to see if you can get some things improved with your energy. So I'm going to put the link in the chat right now.
Great, thank you.
So,
and to everyone who's here, if you have friends who would benefit from this information, the Full Living After 50 series, there's a 6-episode conversation about everything from inflammation to hormones to sex, as we know, to nervous system regulation. please share this link. It's the pauseboxco.com/FL50 series. It's free until January 31st. So no obligation, just good information. And then for my, if you're interested in working with much more around the energy, the mindset, the emotional and spiritual layers of this transition, I absolutely have a video for you to watch. It's part of this special menopause edition of the energy map. So it comes with a guide about kind of how are you showing up and what are some of the mindset remedies that you could employ to get that golden zone energy that we all love. And then very exciting to say, I have another Sedona retreat coming up. The dates just got set. It's July 17th through the 21st. So if you're more of a in-person immersion person who wants to figure out what's next for yourself and how you can really use this time to step into your biggest self and expression, please get on that wait list. I'd be happy to share information. So that's it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to my beautiful experts and to everyone who's coming. Thank you for your questions. And I just really enjoyed being with you today.
Thank you, Meredith.
So fun. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
y'all.
you.